Hello and welcome to this particular chapter. In this chapter, we're going to talk about text. Okay, we are going to explain the size and typeface of text. We're going to explain how to bold, italize, how to add capital letters, small letters, uppercase and lowercase letters, how to underline, how to do line spacing and word and letter spacing. Okay, we are also going to talk about the properties that allow you to control the appearance of text. Okay, and then in this particular properties we have two different groups. We have one group that directly affect the font and its appearance, and then we have another group that would have the same effect on text no matter what font you were going to what you were using. Let's say color. Okay, one will talk about the way it appears, that is as in regular bold or italic. The other will be, let's say, color of the text. So the color of the text does not matter which kind of font style we apply. Okay, we can choose a particular typeface, but the color will also affect whichever appearance we want it to have, like line spacing, like word spacing. Some of the terminologies that is associated with text or typefaces. One is serif. Okay, when we say serif, which typeface is known as the serif type? The serif typeface, they are the kind of text that add extra details at the end of the main strokes of the letter. So if you check this particular M that I have, you can see something like a horn and some extra detail. Okay, some extra details that it adds. Okay, you can see it at this end, you can see them. Okay, you can also see that of the M here. Okay, these details are what we call the serifs. Okay, particularly when you are printing. Okay, when you are printing in a traditional way, this type of serif typeface is what is recommended. Okay, because it actually makes print easier to read because of the way it stands alone. Add extra details, each letter stands alone in that particular order. Apart from serifs, we have other typefaces. Okay, another one is sans serif. Sans serif. Now, sans serif have straight ends to letters. They have straight. You see, it doesn't have extra details, just as we saw here. Sans serif does not have those extra details. Okay, it's straight edges, everything is straight, and it has what a cleaner design. Screens have a lower resolution than print. Okay, so if the text is small, unlike the other one that has very large text, which is the sans serif, that is the serif that is mostly used for the lengthy text. The sans serif, as we have it, has to do with if the text is small. Okay, it is easier to read when the text is not too many. But if the text are many, okay, the one that is easier to read is the serif. Okay, let's go to the another typeface called the monospace. Every letter in the monospace has a fixed width. Okay, if you check, the thickness of all the letters are the same. Okay, they are also commonly used for code. Okay, and they align nicely. If you check, the thickness of this end is the same as the thickness of this end and that of the curve here. Same with the M. Same. Unlike this, you can see that this side is smaller, this side is bigger, this side is smaller, this side is bigger, this side is bigger, this is smaller. It doesn't have the same width. But if you check this, all the width is the same. That is for the mono space. Okay, there is usually has the same width. how to choose typeface, okay, and how to specify typeface for your website. Okay, it is important that a browser will usually display it if it is installed on the user's computer. That means that a particular typeface or a particular font should be installed on your computer or on your device, so that if I use that particular font in writing or in creating my website, you'll be able to what, to actually read or view it. If I write in a particular typeface, okay, and then you don't have that particular font installed on your computer, it will be very, very difficult for you to be able to what, to read, because I use a particular format in what, or a particular typeface in writing, and you don't have that typeface. We explain that serif has extra details at the end, and examples of text that has what, serif, or that is serif in nature, is Georgia, is Times New Roman. Those are the popular ones. We have a lot. These are the popular ones, and it is very, very popular even in MS Word. In sans serif, we told you they have straight edges, and examples of those ones are Arial, Verdana, okay, and Helvetica. But you should know that sites often use a small set of typeface, okay, that are installed on most computers. You cannot install almost every typeface, but it is possible that at least you have some popular ones available, okay, so that even when you are not able to read with one particular typeface, you can fall on the next one that the programmer will make available. Okay, we have also when creating websites, because it is possible that we don't know those who are going to read it, whether they have those typeface installed or not, we put a group of typefaces, okay, so that when the first one is not able to show, the second one will fall on the second one, or the third one, or in that case we are going to what, insert a font stack, okay, a font stack, instead of leaving it just as a particular typeface. Let's say Times New Roman. What about if the device really does not have Times New Roman? It should fall on Verdana. If it doesn't have Verdana, it should fall on Arial. If it doesn't have Arial, it should fall on Georgia. That is how you create website, so that you'll be able to serve a good majority of what, users. Examples of monospace also include the courier. The courier also is also used in creating websites. So you can just give an example of courier, an example of sans serif, and an example of serif, okay, so that even when a person does not have one, he can fall on the others. Okay, we have the cursive also. The cursive fonts, okay, either have joining strokes or other cursive characteristics, such as handwriting styles. So you see a Comic Sans, you see the monotype. Fantasy also has examples such as Impact. These fantasy fonts are usually used in decorations and for movie titles. A typeface supported, okay, in each of the group. So you should get a fantasy, a cursive, a monospace, a sans serif, or a serif. When you do this, when you pick each group and you pick one or two from them, it is likely that the device that is reading it might have at least one or two of it. So when specifying it, this is what to write. For the property, it is font family, and you write Georgia, Times, and serif. Georgia, Times, and serif, so that it can fall within what, the same categories. Okay, now how do we specify typefaces? Okay, we mentioned the font family here. how do we indicate what values for font family? So font family is the property, but how do we give it values? So the font family property allows you to specify the typeface that should be used, okay, that should be used inside the element to which CSS rules applies. The value of the property is the name of the typeface you want to use. The people who are visiting your website need the typeface you have specified or you have what installed on your computer or their computer. You can specify a list of fonts just like I explained the font stack, okay. You can what specify a list. Don't limit yourself to only one, okay. If you limit yourself, it is possible that your prospective reader or visitor might not be having. So you must not what specify. You can separate each of the font you are giving by a comma, so that it does not what have a disadvantage over other readers, okay. So when this one is not able to pick, it should fall on the next one, and it should fall on the next one. In this case, you can add the generic font name, okay, just like serif, sans serif, and the rest. Your font name is also made up of what? More than one word. It should be put in a double quote. Designers suggest pages usually look better if they use more than 3 typefaces on a page. This is how to specify it. This is an internal CSS. So our concentration should be on the body. On the body, we want to give a property font family. We want to give it Georgia, Times, and Serif. Yes, this is a generic name, okay. This is a generic name. We can also give Arial, Verdana, and we indicate the generic name. We can also give Korea, okay. This will be the monospace, okay. This will be the monospace. I'm going to give you I'm going straight onto my text editor, and I'll use those ones as examples, the typefaces. Then we can move on to size of type, okay. Now this is my text editor, so let me just go into my CSS, paste this code that I have. Let me describe this as typeface or typefaces. Now what I want to do is I'll use font family as a property, and I'll indicate Georgia, Times, and Serif. So Times or Times New Roman, Georgia are examples of what? Serif group. The sans serif group, I have what? I have Area, Verdana. Those should apply to my headings, my heading 1 and my heading 2. Whilst the entire body, like the entire visual area of my web page, should be serif. And then let me just do this. Let me just do paragraph, okay. All my paragraphs should also have the monospace, which is the what? Korea, or it should do Korea new. If Korea new is not found, it should fall on Korea, okay. Let me just bring this one and then manage some space. All right, so let me just save this file and go straight to my browser and then refresh. Now you can see I've used 3 different types of typefaces. This we said is usually used for codes, this one, and that is the monospace, same width, okay. We also indicated that the sans serif should be used for our headings, heading 2, and then this heading 1, okay. Let me see the codes once again. Heading 1 and heading 2 should have the sans serif, whilst the entire body should have what? The serif. So this is exactly how to specify font names. Let's continue with our slides, then we'll come back to our text editors again. We indicated that in this chapter we are also going to talk about the size of the typefaces. So font size, we're going to explain font size. Okay, so for font size property, it enables you to specify a size for the font or a size for the typeface. There are several ways to specify the size of a font. The most common ones are pixels. We spoke about pixels. Okay, we told you pixels are usually used because they allow web designers to be very very precise, okay, over what the over the size of what of their font. Okay, the number of pixels is followed by the letter px. So if I want 20 pixels, I'll say 20 px. 20 px. We can also specify font size by using percentages. Okay, the default size of text in a browser is what, 16 pixels. Okay, so a size of 75% would be equivalent to something like 12 pixels, and 200% font size would be equal to 32 pixels. So if you create a rule to make all the text inside a body element to be 75%, okay, that means we are using a what, 12 pixels size. Okay, and you can also specify another rule that indicates the content of the element inside the body. Element would be, let's say, 75%, which represent the 12 pixels. It will be also 9 pixels, that is 70% of the 12 pixels font size. We can also use ems. Ems simply means the width of the letter M. The width of the letter M. So if you check in my examples of typefaces, I was using a lot of M's in explaining the typefaces. Okay. Now I am going to explain the font sizes. So I'm going to use pixels. I'm also going to use percentage. And I'm going to use the M's. So let me just comment out. Now you can realize that the entire body, I've given it a particular font family I want, and I said the font size should be what, the entire body should be what, 12 pixels, and my heading, level 1 heading should be 200%, and my level 2 heading should be what, 1.3 m. I told you the px stands for pixels, and the percentage sign of course goes for percentage, and the em goes for the amount or the weight of m's. Let me just save this and see how my page is gonna look like. Okay, you see, now it has even what, it has made the default font size to be what, 12. So if this is what you want, you specify it, and you want to specify a 200% for h1, okay, you indicate that one as well. If you want it to be in pixels too, you can indicate that one to also be in pixels. Let me just increase the font size of my h1. It looks small for me. Let me just do a 300%, and let me just do a 1.5 m, and then the entirety, let me just do a 16 pixel. Let me just save this, Ctrl S. Let me refresh my browser. Okay, so it looks a little bigger, so we can actually use it to learn. This is my h1 now, this is my h2 now. Okay, and then another h2 is here. This is the default Sizes used to be 12 initially, but now I've made it 16. Okay, so it depends on the amount we give a particular element, and then we can choose to give either in percentages, in pixels, or in the amount of ems or the width of ems. Now also, when we say type scales, you may have noticed that programs such as Word, Photoshop, InDesign offer the same sizes of text. This is because they are set according to a scale or ratio that was developed by what? The European typographers in the 16th century. For this reason, when you are designing pages using sizes from this scale, okay, this scale will help them look more attractive. When you are using it based on the ratings of the European typographers. Print designers often refer to size of text in terms of points rather than in pixels. Hence they use pt instead of px. Okay, a pixel roughly equates to a point because a point corresponds to 1/72 of an inch, and most computer displays have a resolution of what? 72 dots per inch. The default size of a text in a browser is 16 pixels, just like I made it 16 later. So if you use percentages or ems, you calculate the size of text you want based on the default size of text used in browsers. For example, you could scale down to 12 pixels for the body, for the entire body copy, and scale up to 24 pixels for headings. Recently, some web designers, okay, have started to leave the body text at the default size of 16 and adjust the other font sizes using a scale that helps the relative proportions of this one. When you see, okay, a body of a size of 16 pixels, it might seem quite large, but once you get closer to a larger type, however, most people find it far easier to read the 16 pixels, okay, than the 12. The 12 looks much smaller. What is font face? Font face allows you to use a font even if it is not installed on the computer of the person browsing, by allowing you to specify a path to a copy of the font which will be downloaded if it is not on the user's machine, because this technique allows a version of the font to be downloaded to your user's computer. It is important that license for the font permit it to be used in this way. You add the font to your style sheet using a font face rule. Remember, I told you that the visitor of your web page should be having the same font you use in what? In typing or in creating your web page. Other than that, the person will not be able to read. Okay, there's now the font face rule allows you to even use a font face, okay, that the person does not even have, but in this case you will have to specify an external source by bringing the link of that particular font on the person's machine, so that when the person opens your website, it automatically downloads the font face you have used or the font type you have used for the person to be able to read it in the same format you created the web page. But in this case, you must be mindful of copyright issues as well. Not every font is used for free, just like that. You are supposed to seek for permission or look for the Creative Commons ones, and whether it can be used freely or cannot be used freely. I also explain font family. Okay, it explains the name of the font. This name can then be used as a value of the font family property, which we have used a lot already in our style sheet. Let's talk about the font face in detail, because when you are talking about the font face, you are supposed to indicate the source. Okay, you are supposed to indicate the source of the particular font you have used, so that when the person does not even have it, it automatically downloads. Okay. In order for this technique to work, you will probably need to specify path, as in the link, okay, where you got that particular font from. Many typeface makers do not allow you to use their font for free in that manner, but they are open source fonts or the free ones that you can use. You can get some at www.fontsquirrel.com or www.fonttest.org or www.openfontlibrary.org. When looking at font on this site, it is still important to check for the license agreement, whether it can be used for personal use or you can commercialize it. There are some sites that give you access to use commercial fonts, okay, because they negotiated permission to let their customers use them for free. One is typekit.com, kenes.com, fontspring.com, and Google also provides open source fonts. Rather than adding the font face rule to your own style sheet, you link to a CSS file and font files on their service at www.google.com/web font. Okay, this is one way of adding a font face. So the name is chunk 5 regular, and this is the source of the of the font. You can get it at font/chunk5.eot. You can also specify for your headings, okay, and say chunk 5 regular Georgia, and it's it is serif. Now let's go more into the bold, okay, or the weight, okay, the weight of our font. The font weight property allows you to create bold text. There are two rules that this property commonly takes. One is normal and the other is bold. When it is normal, that means that the text will appear just as a normal weight, but when it is bolded, it means the text will appear bold. It will become thicker than the other text on the same line. Okay, I'm going to give you an example to explain what bold is and how bold can be used. And then also a paragraph, you can also specify a font weight for a paragraph, okay, and by giving it bold. I'm going to explain all these things in our text editor when you open it. Okay, why do we actually give some text bold? Okay, we would like to make a particular text, we would like to emphasize on something on a particular text, so therefore we will not let it appear normal. We would like it to be bolded or maybe given a different style. Okay, what about italic? Now italic is also a font style that is used to create an italicized text. Okay, and there are 3 values for this. Now the 3 values for italic is normal, italic, or oblique. When it is normal, we explain that is appearing in a normal style. Okay, and then when it is italic, it means it's appear more slanted. This is how you write the rules. We go through that one as well. And oblique, this causes the text to appear oblique. I'm going to give you an example. Okay, you see how it has been italicized. Okay, it is not unusual for the browser to fail to find an italic version of a typeface. This is my text editor, okay, which I was going to explain the bold and italic. Okay, so I've decided to make my first level heading bold. I've given it a font weight of bold, and my second level heading I've given it italic, a font style of italic. Okay, so I just have to save this file. This is slanting, that is the italic H2, and this is bolded. Now let's discuss the uppercase and then lowercase letters. Okay, the uppercase and lowercase letters, we use a property called text transform. Okay, this property is used to change the case of text, giving it the following values: uppercase, lowercase, or capitalize. So when you do it uppercase, it causes the text to appear in uppercase or in block letters. Lowercase causes the text to appear in lowercase or in small letters. Also causes the first letter of each word to appear block. This is an example. We are going to do it in our text editor. Okay, now let's talk about underline and strike. In underline and strike, we use a property called text decoration. Okay, text decoration. This allows you to specify values such as none, underline, line through, and blank. When you use the blank, it means you are trying to animate the text. You make it flash on and off. Line through also adds a line through words, like as in strike through when you are using MS Word. And underline also puts a line under a text. Okay, and overline, okay, adds a line over the top of the text. There's another property or another value called none. This removes any decoration already applied to the text, and this is how text decoration applies to a particular element. We're also going to explore that one. And this is leading or line height. Leading, but it is leading, but it is pronounced as what? Leading. Okay, it's a term that typographers also what? Use for the vertical space between lines of text. That is as in line spacing. The part of the letter that drops beneath the baseline is called the descender, while the highest point of the letter is called the ascender. Leading is measured from the bottom of the descender on one line to the top of the ascender on the next line. In CSS, line height property sets the height of an entire line of text. So the difference between the font size and then the line height is equivalent to the leading. Increasing the line height makes the vertical gap between the lines of text larger. Now let's explore this more by going to our text editor. Now this is my text editor. Let me paste the codes for the text transform. Okay, so that let me arrange my code properly. Okay, so let me save it and then view. Now I changed this H1, which was uppercase, to lowercase, and I also changed this one also, and I capitalized all my paragraph. I capitalized all my paragraph, as seen in the says capitalize all paragraphs. H1 should be lowercase, H3 should also be lowercase. Okay, I can decide to make this uppercase, so let me just make it uppercase and then save again. Now I check. Now H3 has become uppercase. Let me also change this one to uppercase. Text editor, H1 also uppercase. Okay, I save, I refresh my browser, and I see it's back to uppercase. Okay, now the practical for text decoration. Also, I've made my second level heading underline, and then all my paragraph, I don't want any text decoration. Let me just change it and make, we have underline and then we have overline. Okay, let me make this one overline. Let me just save it and see how it's going to appear. So I've made this underline and I've made this overline. Okay, you can decide to make it none. Now after leading, we are also going to look at another thing, which is letter and word spacing. Letter and word spacing. Kerning is the term typographers use for space between each letter, like between this W and this O, and then this O and this R and this R and this D. So it is kerning. You can control the space between each letter with the letter spacing property. It is particularly helpful to increase the kerning when your heading or when your sentence is all in uppercase. If your text is in the sentence or in the normal case, increasing or decreasing the kerning can make it harder to read. You can also control the gap between words using the word spacing property. So in this case, we are looking at what? Letter spacing and then word spacing. Okay, letter spacing and word spacing. Now when you specify a value for these properties, it should be given in ems. We explain that ems talks about the width of what? Ems in your particular element, and it will be added on top of the default value specified by font. The default gap between words is set by the typeface, that is 0.25 m, and it is unlikely that you would need to change this property regularly. If the typeface is bold or you have increased the space between letters, then a larger gap between words can increase readability. Now let's go and practicalize this in our text editor. Now I've added some codes for word and letter spacing. So you can see my H1 and my H2 are having the same rule, which is text transform uppercase. The letter spacing is 0.2 m. Whilst my paragraph, I'm going to bold them and then also put a word space of 1 m. Let me save this file and then view it. Now I've seen that the spaces between my words have increased. That is what? The word spacing. Okay, and the letter spacing is that of the heading. You can see that it has a space between each of the letters, and the words also have space between them. This also has some space between it. Okay, that is by specifying word spacing and then letter spacing. Now let's talk about text alignment or alignment. This refers to the arrangement of text on a particular web page. Okay, and we have four different values it could take, and the property name is text align. So it could take left, that's by arranging all your texts to the left; right, arranging them to the right; center, by allowing it to center the text; and justify indicates that every line in a paragraph except the last line should set to take place the full width of the containing box. Okay, and you can see the code for it, how to specify text alignment. We are going to do the practice, and then we'll move on some other types of alignment. Okay, when you use several paragraphs of text, it is considered easiest to read if the text is left aligned. Justified text looks at the words on each of the individual lines and creates an equal gap between those words, just like it happens in MS Word. It can look odd if you end up with large gaps between some words and smaller gaps between others. This often happens when your lines are not very wide or when your text contains long words. Let's go to our text editor and try to align some of the text we have on the page. Now look at the text alignment rules I've typed in here. H1, I said H1 should be centered, and then H2 should be justified, while the paragraph should align to the right. You can give it any alignment value you want. Let me save it and refresh my page. Now you realize that I said my paragraph should be aligned to the right. That's why you see it's messed up this way. This should be centered, so you can see it is at the center of the page. Usually headings are centered, not necessarily always, but most headings are centered. Okay, now this will bring us to the end of chapter 12, which is text. See you in chapter 13. Bye bye.